So one of the things that's always going to be vital is the Middle East. And when I think Middle East, I think about one of the best think tanks over the FDD, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And a good friend of mine, Jonathan Schanzer, is there. And it used to take half the segment to introduce him because he had a big, long business card, associate director of this particular thing, whatever. Well, it's a lot more compact now because since we last spoke, Mr. Schanzer is now the executive director of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. A, congratulations. And B, welcome. Merry Christmas. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
So I take a look at the Trump post that essentially says, hey, terrorists, you better release every single one of those hostages by the time my hand comes off the Bible at 12:01, January 20th, or there's going to be hell to pay. Is this bold, robust, strong policy or just kind of political theater saber rattling?
I think it might be all of the above, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think if we look at what the Biden administration has done for the last 14 months, their rhetoric has been, well, we're just trying to get all sides to agree to give up these hostages. We're trying to bring about an end to this crisis. We're hoping that calm can prevail. These are not the words of a superpower. These are not the words of a country that is trying to take control or that is taking control of a volatile region. I have a colleague, Mariam Wahba, who tweeted something out the other day, which I thought was profound. She said, President Trump speaks Arabic. And that's exactly the way I think we ought to look at this. He issued an ultimatum to the region. They're not used to seeing such blunt rhetoric, especially over the last 14 months. I think it jarred some. I think it scared some. I hope right now that Hamas is scared. I hope that its patrons in Iran are scared. I think they should be, given what we're seeing from the incoming Trump administration personnel. But I also think that there are some countries that should be on notice here, too. The countries of Turkey and Qatar, they've played a dangerous double game, pretending to be American allies while all the while supporting Hamas. I think everyone here right now should be reconsidering their positions. And I get the sense that we may see this thing wrapped up, at least parts of it anyway, before Trump swears in. The only issue that I'll just flag is that I'm not sure that there's any one person in Hamas right now that knows where all the hostages are. It's total chaos over there. But I would bet on a bunch of them being released before Trump comes in if they know what's good for them.
Those were my thoughts as well. I thought, even if it is political theater, it's effective political theater. It can sometimes seem condescending to say kind of what we're talking about here is like, well, he's talking to them in a language they understand. But he is talking to them in a language they understand. I mean, it actually is true. So let me ask you this. If indeed they're shaking in their boots at Hamas HQ, what can America do to them militarily that Israel has not already done?
Well, I think that's a good point. And I actually don't see that there's that much that the U.S. would even be willing to do vis-a-vis Hamas, right? I mean, Hamas is eviscerated. We're talking about 23 out of 24 brigades in Gaza destroyed, all the above ground infrastructure gone, thousands of fighters killed. There's not much left to pick apart here. The Israelis are doing what they need to do. But I think, first of all, giving the Israelis the unequivocal support will be important. We're not seeing that from the Biden administration. They've been sort of hemming and hawing about whether they should be giving the Israelis the weaponry they need and the political support that they need, the intelligence that they need. I think we've just equivocated too much, too often here, and I think that has not deterred Hamas. But then I think we have some questions, that can be answered rather quickly. Are we going to start targeting the regime in Iran? Are we going to start looking for ways to bring down that regime so long as they destabilize the Middle East? You got to remember, Iran is responsible for a large part of what has been happening here. They are the key patrons. They're the key people who've been training and arming up Hamas and Hezbollah, for that matter. Also the Houthis in Yemen that have been targeting American personnel in the Red Sea, the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. All of these guys are bad actors, and it all tracks back to Iran. We can put maximum pressure on the regime immediately. We can take steps to bring it down. And then on top of that, we've got the financial pressure that we can bring to some of Hamas's other patrons, whether that's Turkey or Qatar or Algeria or Malaysia. There's a lot that I think the U.S. can do almost on day one to start to put significant pressure on all the bad actors that have brought us to this really horrible point in the Middle East.
Last thing, what in the world is going on in Syria? Just in the last 24 hours, the U.S. says it has carried out airstrikes against Iranian militias in Syria. So many moving parts. What is the deal in Syria right now?
Well, in short, I've been saying this is like the movie Alien versus Predator. We're looking at two really bad actors, two bad sides squaring off. The story is that basically for the last 6-7 years, the Syrian civil war has been simmering on a very low flame, barely perceptible to the human eye. For those that watch it closely, they'd say, sure, there's moves that have been going on, but, we're not talking about significant chunks of territory being captured. Then all of a sudden over Thanksgiving weekend, we see this group, HTS as it's known, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They're an al-Qaeda affiliate sponsored by the Turks and the Qataris. They take Syria's second largest town of Aleppo. They take it from the Assad regime, which is, of course, a dictatorship that is supported, backed, and armed by the Iranian regime and by the Russians. If that all sounds confusing, it should be, right? So you got Shiite militias that are there backing up the Assad regime, and then you've got Al-Qaeda and other radical groups trying to target it. Like I said, this is an alien versus predator type scenario. To quote Henry Kissinger, it's a pity both sides can't lose. We can try to contain this conflict. We should try to contain this conflict and make sure that no one runs away with too much territory or too much power, because I got to tell you, I don't want to see the Assad regime win. I don't want to see Al-Qaeda win. I don't want to see Turkish or Qatari-backed Sunni jihadis win. I don't want to see the Russians gain from this. I really can't think of one actor that I'd like to see coming away with even a shred of victory. So we've got our work cut out for us. This is going to be, I think, a pretty messy situation for the Trump administration to inherit. I do think that it is part and parcel of what's been going on in the Middle East. The Israelis have degraded Hezbollah, who, by the way, have been known to fight in this conflict as well. They've degraded the Shia militias in Syria. I think the Al-Qaeda guys sensed a shift in momentum, a shift in power, so they seized the initiative. But that doesn't mean that the U.S. should be happy about this. So we've got some containing to do. We've got some strategizing to do. This is going to be messy, so buckle up.
Jonathan Schanzer is the executive director now of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Follow him at Schanzer and FDD there on Twitter. God bless, Jonathan. Congrats on the new gig, Alien versus Predator. That's the kind of smart clarity that you can bring